At the John Rylands Library, we have papyri that open a window onto the small-scale personal tragedies of daily life in Roman Egypt. For example, the petition of Aurelia Artemis is a 3rd century document which records a widow's plea to the Roman governor to stop the abusive behavior of a neighbor. Aurelia Artemis is careful in her petition to emphasize the vulnerability of her position as a widow.
To the most illustrious prefect, from Aurelia Artemis, perceiving your love of equity, my lord prefect, and your care for all, especially women and widows, I approach you praying to obtain your aid.
It is something, I think, feeling secure in a world where that having lost your husband is in a way equal to having lost your ID card, because in public as a woman you were sort of half invisible.
Aurelia Artemis states that after her husband's death, her neighbor has taken advantage of her position to steal the family's flock of sheep and goats.
It was he who wrongfully removed into his own keeping my husband's goats and sheep, 60 in number.
You know, that woman must be so strong, because just her husband's died. She's on her own. She doesn't seem to have a father to turn to. She doesn't seem to have a brother that she can turn to, and this is a man's world.
It seems quite clear that the women are less likely to have the education to get through it, so they need the men to help them. So in the same way, there's a dependency structure, isn't there, where you've got the women at the bottom are completely dependent on the men.
She's still at the mercy of the powers that be, which are men. What else could she do? Possibly there's the church. We know that they did sometimes get involved in these things.
We do have some papyri where it shows Christians appealing to bishops for help in domestic and private disputes. So maybe that was one of the appeals of Christianity, that it gave you access to resources to play with the big boys that you wouldn't normally have.
Yeah.
The church was, in some sense, much more, I think, an institution of sort of, you know, cohesion in society than it is today. There were rules, biblical rules about pleading for the widow.
Not wanting to put a cat amongst the pigeons, of course. We're talking about this as though that this complaint is absolutely true, that her husband was merely pasturing his sheep on somebody else's land. There's always a danger of reading things as face value, as though they are true. They are not true, and these are still to be tested.
We know from other papyri that the case of Aurelia Artemis was passed up the chain of the Roman system of justice, but we don't know how it turned out. Taken together, stories like this one form a colourful mosaic. Each new fragment has the potential to change how we see the wider picture of daily life in the ancient world.